Chamber of Chinese Enterprises in Zimbabwe, senior government officials here present, heads and executives of parastatals and state enterprises here present, heads, executives, and representatives from industry and commerce here present, ladies and gentlemen. I'm quite privileged and honored to be with you here today at this special workshop. The crafting of the Zimbabwe Agenda for Sustainable Socio-Economic Transformation, ZIMASET Blueprint, ushered in a new dispensation in the economic and social facets of Zimbabwe. Consequently, the crying need for strategic and focused leadership in both the public and private sectors cannot be overemphasized. It is a shared and well-expressed national desire that parastatals and state enterprises reforms are long overdue to reconfigure these entities into a mode characterized by timely and patriotic responsiveness to the obvious crying need of our nation. This is against the background of ambitious strategic goals set out in the ZIMASET economic blueprint. Time has come when the pursuit of clarity and coherence of policies anchored by vigorous implementation of our broad economic policies are no longer a subject for mere rhetoric, but must take precedence over all corporate intentions in all our parastatals and state enterprises. Our chosen economic turnaround options imbued in ZIMASET should be put to rigorous test to prove their pragmatic viability. All our systems and structures need to be erected upon practical frameworks designed to inherently address the country's most pressing challenges of infrastructure development, employment creation, economic growth, people empowerment, poverty eradication, and sustainable social transformation. Our SOEs and parastatals must rise to this mandate without any excuse. Ever since independence, SOEs and parastatals have played a critical role in driving economic growth and development. I strongly believe that their role should be elevated and made much more pronounced in our ZANU-PF-led government is going to achieve this goal set out in ZIMASET. As such, what we need to question is not the need to have state enterprises underpinning economic transformation, but it is their modus operandi in today's Zimbabwean economy. How responsive have they become given the acuteness of the challenges faced by the country? Certainly, for our state enterprises and parastatals, it can no longer be business as usual. Master of ceremony and esteemed guests, allow me to reaffirm that yours is quite a befitting theme, which reads, State Enterprises, the pivot and heartbeat of ZIMASET and the economy. Within the context of today's theme, I'm persuaded to look at two critical issues as regards the strategic roles of state enterprises in ZIMASET-driven economy. One, expected roles of SOEs and parastatals in today's and in future economic development. Our SOEs must stand out as champions in the rebuilding of the country's economic infrastructure, delivery of strategic as well as in creating an enabling environment for the recovery and prosperity of private businesses. Remember that your mandate is closely linked to those of other SOEs and parastatals. Each SOE and parastatal must understand its mandate in line with the defined economic clusters and subclusters and relentlessly pursue it. Economic recovery and growth and development should be driving aspirations of our public enterprises. Your mantra must be collaboration for sustainable socio-economic transformation. Find your space and determine the critical synergies in high impact. Pursue them and never rest until success has been achieved for the good of all citizens of our country. Share experiences with others and discover the fullness of your role versus the country's expectations of your mandate, so as to improve your chances of success. Failure to fulfill your mandate will have a domino effect within terminal ripples across the economy. When ZESA unleashes more of load shedding than electricity, Air Zimbabwe, NRZ, ZIMRA, to name a few, are automatically incapacitated to meet their mandate. When Air Zimbabwe wings fold up, the hospitality and tourism industry collapses. When Zinara fails to deliver on its mandate to develop roads and other transport infrastructure, Wange also suffers. And in turn, power generation, industry, agriculture, and commerce will not escape the undesirable consequences of such systematic failure. Shall we allow individuals to destroy our critical state enterprises or parastatals? No. Shall we allow individuals to destroy our parastatals and interstate enterprises? The answer is no. As a country, we cannot allow that. Therefore, I want to challenge you, players in the public sector, to realize that yours are mandates not in isolation. There is a chain reaction to every action that you take. Your organization does not operate in isolation. Ladies and gentlemen, I therefore wish to propose an intra-public sector consultative approach and framework guided and coordinated by the Office of the President and Cabinet. Such a move will enhance policy coherence and a well-coordinated implementation of public programs under the ZIMASET economic blueprint. Secondly, the limiting factors and areas of urgent attention. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to tackle under this second issue 3 points which, in my view, constitute critical elements that are negatively impacting our SOEs and parastatals, thereby limiting their role as key enablers to economic development in the context of ZIMASET economic blueprint. I prefer to call these the evil triplets. These are poor corporate governance, the corruption and abuse of office, and toxic leadership. Poor corporate governance. Esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, line ministries should ensure that bloodlines of authority and accountability within their SOEs and parastatals are quickly redrawn and clearly redefined. Without this, poor corporate governance will continue to haunt our parastatals and state enterprises with obvious compromised delivery on their mandates. In 2014, government came up with the National Code for Corporate Governance. In his foreword to the code, His Excellency the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Comrade Robert Gabriel Mugabe, asserts the importance of corporate governance. I quote, "This code will provide greater impetus towards the implementation of the objectives and goals of our socio-economic development blueprint, the Zimbabwe Agenda for Sustainable Socio-Economic Transformation, and other successor plans and programs in the future." Close quote. Chapter 9 of the new Constitution of Zimbabwe exhorts the nation to, I quote, "adopt and implement policies and legislation to develop efficiency, competency, accountability, transparency, personal integrity, and financial probity in all institutions and agencies of government at every level and in every public institution, close quote. Ladies and gentlemen, by adopting the Code of Corporate Governance, President Mugabe has demonstrated exemplary leadership predicated upon principles of good corporate governance, which must be embraced by all patriotic Zimbabweans in this country, especially those in positions of leadership in public institutions. A healthy balance of corporate power, full, timely, and transparent disclosure of material information lie at the center of best practice in corporate governance. You are exalted to ensure that corporate power in your entities is not concentrated on one or a few individuals in order to guard against the creation of conditions for abuse of office, power, and corruption. We have seen this happening in our institutions and ministries. We have allowed it to happen in our midst. Surely we cannot allow it to continue. We cannot allow it to continue. Boards of directors and management of public institutions are entrusted by shareholders to act as good stewards over public resources by seeking to minimize risk on capital if our nation is going to prosper. A cancerous disease that has affected the core of public institutions is the abuse of power and office by leaders in these particular public offices. Examples such as the recent case jailed former managers of Air Zimbabwe and many more accounting officers and public managers who have criminally abused or are abusing their offices and looted or are looting public funds with impunity. I am of the strong view that those who violate good corporate governance and betray public trust must face the full wrath of the law and never be allowed to go unpunished. Society must take a very dim view of this rot by delivering justice against perpetrators of such economic crimes. More so, those that are protecting, because they are being protected, those that are protecting these senior public servants must be brought to book too. We want this country to get out of this financial and economic quagmire. The only way is to plug the leaks of our revenue through fraud, corruption, and insider trading. How many of the 78 plus state enterprises and parastatals have consistently and annually published their audited financial statements? How many of you are observing the 30-70% ratio in respect of staff costs versus your expenses on mandate? How many SOEs and parastatals are genuinely proud of themselves for delivering that which they were created for in a transparent and convincing manner? Yeah. If I was to ask each one of us here to present to us here, it was going to be terrible, eh? How many of us? But we wish each and every organization would uphold to that. Ladies and gentlemen, listen to this. Corruption and abuse of office. Merriam-Webster dictionary defines corruption as, and I'm quoting from the dictionary, impairment of integrity, virtue, or a moral principle. It further clarifies that corruption is, and I'm quoting again, depravity, decay, and decomposition. It is inducement to wrong by improper or unlawful means, such as bribery. I'm closing the quote. Today, the shame of corruption has engulfed most of our government departments, local authorities, state enterprises, and parastatals. This rot continues to erode public confidence in our institutions to the detriment of national development. The successful implementation of the Zim Asset Economic Blueprint hinges on demonstration of high integrity by leaders of these public institutions, which constitute the pillar upon which the success of Zim Asset is established. Recently, obscene salaries for executives in several parastatals, alleged cases of bribery in the Zimbabwe Republic Police, ZIMRA, SPB, among others, have hogged the limelight of the courts of law as well as that of public opinion. Obviously, this is against the spirit of Zim Asset and impinge on service delivery. Our president, who is my president, His Excellency President Robert Gabriel Mugabe, has shown us the way. He has reiterated that corruption must be fought against at all levels. In his recent speech at the 2015 police graduation parade in Harare on 14 May 2015, just recent, he re-emphasized his position against corruption, and I'm quoting, "Accordingly, all cases of corruption, dishonesty, and abuse of authority should be expeditiously investigated, regardless of whether they occur among police or the general public." Close quote. What more do we want? The president has said. But why are we not prosecuting people? They are being protected. The onus remains ours to rid our systems of corruption. Let us not condone corruption in all its forms of manifestation. The question is, why are you condoning corruption when the president has directed that it must be fought against and eradicated? Why are we condoning corruption? The president has said, let us report to the law enforcement agencies who have been directed to act expeditiously on all matters concerning corruption in our institutions. It calls for a collective and courageous confrontation of this monster for us to restore genuine integrity and confidence into public systems if sustainable socio-economic transformation is going to be achieved. Are you prepared, like me? Some faces look prepared, like me, to expose corruption. What is stopping the culprits from being arrested? Why are we not reporting them? Why are they being protected? And who is protecting them? You will ask yourself. You will find in one way or the other you might have protected one culprit. Ladies and gentlemen, it's high time we burst the corruption syndicate chains if this nation is to deliver on its mandate to service the nation at large rather than a few individuals. It is a known fact that Zim Asset requires support by investors. However, the fact also remains that capital only flows into a country where public institutions and systems enjoy high integrity. We can run all over the world trying to look for funds to capitalize our institutions. For as long as we lack in terms of integrity, there is no investor who would come and invest in our organization. Networks and systems that feed on corruption always rise up in revulsion when one of their members is unmasked. If you find yourself attracting many enemies in institutions, that means you are in the right course. You are fighting corruption. They thrive on oiling the machinery to prepare it to crash, and one who threatens to dismantle it. We have noticed that such systems tend to protect corrupt individuals while seeking to destroy everyone who opposes it. Only the strong-willed will be able to stand against it. Master of ceremony, allow me now to turn to the third of the evil triplets, toxic leadership. Leonardo DiCaprio, a well-known movie star, argues that, and I quote from a movie star, as soon as enough people give you enough compliments and you are wielding more power than you ever had in your life, it's not that you become arrogant or rude to people, but you get a false sense of your own importance and what you have accomplished. You actually think you have altered the course of history. Close quote. We have many of these people in our institutions. People that think they are the ones that move organizations. They are the ones that move government. If you remove them, government will not work. But in actual fact, they are the people that are running down our companies. That are the people that are destroying government. The moment you realize that and plug them out, you will see organizations starting to tick. One of the reasons why SOEs and parastatals are failing to make their desired impact on the economy and society in general is that their leaders bask in the comfort of their own delusional success. They deceive themselves by claiming that they are exemplary leaders who have presided over government departments with impeccable records. On the basis of false effectiveness, they victimize everyone who demonstrates creativity or suggests any new ideas. Jean Lipman Bluman points out that, and I quote, toxic leaders are those individuals who, by virtue of their destructive behaviors and their dysfunctional personal qualities or characteristics, inflict serious and enduring harm on the individuals, groups, organizations, communities, and even the nations that they lead. Close quote. So toxic leading unilaterally vary people's contracts, abuse power, and victimize employees. By virtue of their acts, the government gets heavily litigated. Can we allow this to happen? No. Those people, most of you maybe you will agree with me, there is no single case that has been taken to labor court by an employee and most of our organizations wins them. Government is all losing a lot of money because of these toxic leadership. They follow procedure when they employ people, but when firing, they use emotions. Toxic leaders are known for bullying behaviors involving, and I quote, shouting, swearing, name-calling, malicious sarcasm, threats to safety, or actions that are threatening and intimidating, humiliating, hostile, offensive, or cruel. To cement their position, bullies evaluate performance unfairly, deny advancement, steal credit, attack reputations, give arbitrary instructions, and even assign unsafe work. They can interfere, sabotage, undermine, and encourage failure. Close quote. This is from an anonymous author. Believe you me, this is destroying our country. The president, the government want performance. Yes, performance of repute. Our crisis regarding this challenge with our SOEs and parastatals is that noble visions of non-toxic leaders are subordinated to grand illusions of toxic leaders. Their grand illusions entail unrealistic dreams made up of a world purified not by improving themselves, but by eliminating and or contaminating others who are different from them. By far, toxic leaders inflict untold harm to national objectives and organizational mandates by claiming that they alone are the saviors who can protect the company or organization from collapsing, when the outcomes of their actions clearly prove otherwise. This is what I call the delusional success syndrome that cripples public institutions, ladies and gentlemen. We need to take stock of ourselves, as well as our collective leadership in the public sector, with a view to eradicating toxic leadership. Zimmerset cannot take us where we want us unless we promote a culture of innovation, creativity, transparency, and self-introspection. I am convinced that Zimbabwe has the human capital as well as the natural resources with great potential capable of driving economic growth of immense proportions. We can do what Singapore, China, and Japan have done within reasonably short spans of their history. We can push the frontiers of economic development as envisaged in the Zimmerset if leaders in public institutions, government ministries, and the private sector provide genuine leadership to their followers. We need to promote a culture of mutual trust, respect, and self-confidence. This is the time to stop destroying each other and focus on national goals as enunciated in the Zimmerset economic blueprint. But the corrupt and the saboteurs of the economy must face the music, get arrested, and be put in jail. Ladies and gentlemen, the era of state enterprises and parastatals milked state coffers without themselves adding any value to national development should be a thing of the past. Hard decisions must be made to either disband or privatize loss-making parastatals and state enterprises. They cannot be allowed to continue bleeding the economy when they have abandoned their mandates. In cases where strategic and socially desirable but uneconomic services should be delivered by SOEs and parastatals, the cost of such services need to be agreed, and their respective boards and management should also agree with the Treasury on the limits and the attendant consequences of failure to deliver. We need to open a new chapter of results-based performance, in which case each SOE and parastatal justifies its existence through delivery on its mandate. RIBA must not just be told. Implementation is key. Non-performance must be shown the door. Civil Service Inspectorate must be effective. Arguments such as the illegal sanctions should cease to be cited as reasons for non-performance, because we now need boards and management wired to think solutions in an environment constrained by illegal economic sanctions. Otherwise, this country will never move beyond the shackles of illegal economic sanctions. Looks like everyone is agreeing with me. Because the sanctions are not going. The sanctions will remain there. So if we use that as a scapegoat, then it means we are saying we must put the country at hold. So we must be wired to think for solutions against the background of illegal sanctions. Zimbabwe demands SOEs and parastatals the delivery of a 21st century economy. We need energy, clean water, transport services, that's road, rail, and air, adequate housing, broadband, and next generation networks, regardless of the illegal economic sanctions. State enterprises and parastatals should cease to think in normal terms, but should now think the Zim asset way. The purpose of this workshop is precisely to achieve that. Remember, as you are the pivots and the heartbeats of Zimaset and the economy. I thank you.